simply nothing more than an expression of hubris, pride, a belief, that we can do it our way and alone. So all of this is very, the shelf life is short on all of these issues because the planet is in a state of terminal crisis. Does that have anything to do with the psychedelic experience, or are these separate issues? How can they be separate issues if the psychedelic experience is a mirror of the state of the individual and collective psyche?
Ladies and gentlemen.
You're having a nightmare. What if it's true?
Ladies and gentlemen.
Alan, it's a possibility, isn't it?
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
Secrets.
In a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers,
Constant, extreme danger,
which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger,
extreme danger,
that an announced need for increased security.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Carr.
Will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control.
You're crazy.
And no officious, high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes.
Isn't the Pentagon suspicious that all the buildings blow up?
Or to withhold from the press and the public
I think you're just looking at things for the first time.
the facts they deserve to know.
You've had your whole f***ing life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
The facts they deserve to know. They deserve to know. Deserve to know. Deserve to know. Facts they deserve to know.
Those who have achieved unelevated existence, raise your fists.
Okay. Hey.
Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. These are the Conspiracy Queries, and I am the Alan Park. Still get to be here. But not necessarily from that episode. I just thought it'd help me out considering my voice is rough, and what I said last time on that one show was perfectly acceptable to get going. Welcome to Green Crush Conspiracy Queries with the very much rough-throated Alan Park. Thank you for listening, and thank me for before setting up that intro. We have a fantastic guest today, and we have 3 guests. So the guest is Sensible Ontario, and they are made up of 3 people. That's always a good number for me, and I'm looking very much forward to it. So it's 420 week, everybody. It's 420 week, and it is, of course, blizzarding out on the heels of the ice storm of Toronto. It's settled down now a little bit, but not too happy about it. Nobody's thrilled about it, but we're just making do in this freezing cold climate change world of ours. That Terrence McKenna at the beginning of the show was offering a little insight from the other side of consciousness to help us try to figure it out from the past. Does that make sense? It's been a fascinating week for myself. People who know me very well know that, and people who think they know me very well think somebody else is out there imitating me, and they're wrong. That's cool. People make mistakes. But I won't back down. I'll stand my ground at the gates of hell, because I've already been to the gates of hell and kicked that son of a bitch standing in front of him in the balls, and did it twice, and I'm back here. I learned how to get out of stage 4 cancer that was terminal and metastasized into my bones, and sometimes when I think about it, I go right back to it, and it's gets emotional, because it's like I'm not processing it poorly. It's that you realize what's happened to you, and if you're in that moment for real, it just takes over. So that's why I like funny, and that's why I like to taste everything of its flavor in the moment and really think about it. But it's not thinking, it's just a different state of being. Chapter 2, or maybe 3 of my life, I don't know, but definitely not chapter 1. A lot of friends were upset with me this week, or so they called themselves friends anyhow, but none of them were there when I was on my back at 135 pounds, all gray-green, waiting for someone to come and see me, and sometimes they did when I was slipping in and out. So if you're one of those and you're disappointed, great. But if you think you're my friend in this time of crisis for myself, and you never even knew I had cancer or bothered to find out, or you did know and didn't come and visit me, it's understandable why you don't understand the greater issues at play here within the nuance of social discourse. These folks want a binary choice on that score, but not a binary choice across the board, just a binary choice on what they allow other comics to say and do. And so those are the small c comics now, as I've decided, with little quotation marks around their small c comic, and then there are comics, capital C. And I'm just wondering when one of these small C comics is going to hassle Kelly Carlin, the daughter of George, and see if she can rummage through his old recordings and erase every possible offensive thing, including subject material. Apparently you can't do a joke about rape at all, even if it's positive and not speaking towards the celebration of rape or the victimization of the rape victim, but just the term itself, rape, is enough to make someone who has either been raped or knows someone who was raped, somehow traumatized by rape, means that no one can raise the issue in the stand-up comic circle. And I, for one, will never back down. Right, Tom? I will never back down on being able to articulate as best I can, given the circumstances. I'll take some honey tea in a minute, but the more these topics are walled off for discussion based on what he said and what she said and what she needs to do, the more ridiculous it is. I'll give you an example. Someone very offended by my activities of the previous week told me that she just couldn't believe that I would participate in something that would so give her a hard time when she was just trying to go out and enjoy herself. A hard time. She wanted me to stop ever raising that issue again, the subject matter of that particular joke. And I said, did you say I gave you a hard time? A hard time, did I? Well, I'm going to ask you. No, I'm going to tell you not to reference time ever again. Because at one point, from this cancer, I thought I had run out of time. And it was very traumatic and emotional. And look at me now when I go there. I get upset about thinking about it, and then I have to think of something else immediately, and then I'm okay. So I don't want to hear the word time when in my life and my trauma and my PTSD that was handily remedied by the application of cannabis oil, illegally procured from making it in my own kitchen. But please don't mention time again. It's a very sore spot for me. I really don't want you mentioning that. And if you could please take off your Apple Watch or any other marker thereof, I would be so appreciative. And if you don't, you're a terrible person bent on destroying the quality of my life. I can also tell you that my father, whom I don't get to spend any more time, there it is again, with, he used to work at a moving company called Rawlinson's Movers in Toronto. And they were taking some furniture and pieces of belongings down a staircase, the 4th floor of a warehouse just off of Yonge Street in the center of Toronto. He was coming down the stairs. There were blankets surrounding the grandfather clock that he was carrying with another man, but damn it, he must have tripped on the stairs, or maybe somebody left a slinky there, and down he went to the bottom of the stairs. His partner, of course, at the top, couldn't control the weight of the grandfather clock anymore, and he was crushed to injury and did not survive the hospital term thereafter. The grandfather clock. So if you have a grandfather, or you know one, please do not mention that in my presence, or time, or clocks. And I will do everything I can to protest the use thereof from anyone. It's not fair, it's not reasonable. I've given you fair warning, and why would you want to give me such a hard time by reining all of this in and throwing it in my face? And I'm sure there are egregious episodes in just about everyone's life involving some normal reference point, be it a pencil from the gal who stabbed me in the arm with one in art class in grade 10. Still a good friend of mine, but she kind of lost her nut that day. But had I fallen down into the side of trauma due to the fact that the graphite stuck in my arm festered up a nasty infection that took a lot of time to heal, once I got to the hospital, some other kids in my room were throwing things at each other, and a piece of glass wound up going into my eye. I will have to command you never to mention pencils again. So don't tell me what to fucking say and what I'm allowed to say. Just don't do it. It's a silly game. You can't do it. Because the more we wall off topics of discussion, I'm sure there are people out there that would never dream of coming across this show who are still appalled at the notion of cannabis use. And they can't tell me to stop doing this show. So you see what I mean? How about let's take a little self-responsibility, as did I when I found myself so sick and a bunch of fucking doctors telling me I wasn't going to make it, hypnotizing me with their white coats of magic spells. And I didn't buy into it, and I took my own self-responsibility, and I whipped up my own shit despite the fact that Bill Blair and his ilk, the folks designing the cannabis controls in Canada, disguised as legalization like it's a party, were dead wrong. And I was dead right by not being dead. So I just wanted to get that out there and get it off my chest. I'm sorry if it took as long as it did, but I wasn't going to be able to do the show without that clarity. And I hope everybody understands, even if you're not greater aware of the salient issues surrounding this entire issue. It's not necessarily germane to this show, but the reaction sure has been, and the greater point is, I get to control what you have to talk about. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can do whatever you want. If you want to talk about marshmallows and different shapes of clouds and, you know, what your mom told you on the way home, that's fine for you. Unless my mom died also from cancer at a much younger age than she should have. And so, you know what, on second thought, don't even bring up mothers or mothering or parenting for that matter. Fuck that. Take that out of your act. And I think I've made my point, and I'm sure it will be thoroughly agreed with, because if I've learned one thing this week, it's that logic and reason and understanding are on the same slab I was, and I sure hope they can get up like I did. Take the self-responsibility to understand that if you take yourself out into society at the risk of hearing anybody else say something you don't want, maybe you need to learn to not go to that area. I don't particularly have anything to do with video games. I don't have anything against them. I just never got into that thing. Once Ms. Pac-Man took too many of my quarters when I was rehearsing in a rock band in the 80s and just lost interest. I know people play all kinds of fantastic games, and Grand Theft Auto is out there with all the crime scenes in there. They're not telling that to shut down, are they? Or if they are, they're not getting away with it. So I don't go to video game parlors or Sega empires or anything else or ridicule those who do. In the news, hey, let's go to this. The Hill says that down in the States, there's a picture of a snapping turtle who looks like he can't get a hard-on. Oh, sorry, hang on. It says Mitch McConnell. Yeah, sorry. Legislation that would legalize hemp as an agricultural product is getting fast-tracked through the Senate. It's kind of funny. I'm glad they're doing it. I am so grateful that these people are finally getting their shit together. But I wouldn't call it fast-tracked, since it never should have been off the agricultural production realm since they put it off the thing in 1937. This drastic corporate, criminal, governmental retraction of one of our essential nutrients over the last 80 years plus has caused a lot of people a lot of problems. Lowered immune systems, of course, which have allowed us to weaken ourselves by ingesting the toxic spew in the air, in the water, and in the mouths coming out of these idiots that bounce around like this. But this is a good one for us, so I get it. I'm just aware of the overarching situation that makes fast-tracking something that was evidently perfect in the first place kind of a patting yourself on the back gesture. And I didn't want to leave that unchecked. So good for Mitch McConnell, telling us all about it from Flapping Wattles. The bill, introduced last week by Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, was placed on the Senate calendar Monday. That's yesterday in our time. The procedural move, known as Rule 14, allows it to skip over the committee process, paving the way for the legislation to be brought up on the Senate floor. I'd like to bring up on the Senate floor. The move doesn't automatically guarantee that the bill will get a vote. So here comes some obfuscation. A spokesman for McConnell noted that when they didn't have the guidance or an announcement about if or when the bill would come up, they didn't have that. I'm sure they would have if it was a far more restrictive bill. All the cooler, more opening up of society bills always have a problem coming out, and as soon as they want to drop something heavy, that's not an issue. Hey, you got a 15,000-page Patriot Act that nobody's read? You want to whip that into shape? Sure, it's right here. The bill known as the Hemp Farming Act of 2018, and we have some hemp buddies on the show that we've already spoken to in the States. Going to be happy about this if it really kicks through. Would legalize hemp, removing it from the federal list of controlled substances and allowing it to be sold. Allowing it. Jesus Christ, I can't even read this shit. Allowing it. Oh, thank you. An essential nutrient and buffer against illness that'll send me into my healthcare system that I have to pay for with heavily enforced insurance payments or not at all. By legalizing hemp and allowing it to be sold as an agricultural commodity, it empowers states to conduct their own oversight plans. We can give the hemp industry the tools necessary to create jobs. Fucking duh. And new opportunities for farmers and manufacturers around the county. I think they mean country. It says county. It's not really going to help the states if it's in one county of Kentucky. In addition to McConnell, Rand Paul of Kentucky, and Ron Wyden, he's a Democrat. Ooh, hands across the aisle. And Jeff Merkley, also a Democrat of Oregon, are supporting the legislation. The bill will allow states to regulate hemp as well as allow hemp researchers. Oh my God, I can't take this. To apply for grants from the Agricultural Department and make hemp farmers eligible for crop insurance. Does Raytheon and all of those other military companies that have swallowed up about 96% of all of the expenditures of the United States, do they have any insurance? McConnell indicated late last month that he planned to introduce the bill. WDRB. And there's a link there. That's probably some kind of hick radio station. It noted that Kentucky is currently conducting a pilot program through the Agriculture Department to grow hemp, while a team at the University of Louisville, where they make baseball bats, boy, I've got some of those on my mind right now, is harvesting the crop. Because the season just started, settle down, I don't mean anything. Harvesting the crop to study its use as a biofuel and energy source. So we have a biofuel that's not coming from those rag head-wearing Saudi Wahhabists that seem to dictate all kinds of policy in the Middle East. Let's just bring it on home. Stop spending all those billions of dollars killing other people like you said you'd never do, Don the Wig. It's not a wig, it's a crazy little surgical mess you got up there. I'm sorry, you're embarrassed. There's a lot of pictures of him now. Donald Trump, you seen his hair? I don't care if you love him or hate him. His hair is ridiculous. I thought it was a wig for a long time, but it's actually the result of a vanity project gone wrong where he was trying to make it look even cooler and more fantastic than he already thought it was. And some surgical procedures went awry, and then he's got this giant swoop hanging. He's got to bring it around, paste it in there, bring another one. It's like pieces, like you're assembling tent flaps. And it blows around just as ridiculously and frustratingly when the wind kicks up, getting on a plane or some such. I'm off track again. But let's get that biofuel energy source economy rolling at home and stop killing all these fucking people on the other side of the planet so that they lose their homes and their families. And then the ones that are left decide to become terrorists. And then we go, oh my God, why are these people so mad at us? I don't read. We don't have to do that anymore. Little salt water for you. I hope you're looking at this outside of Canada. There's a giant Moosehead lager truck out of my window, and you can't get any more Canadian beer than that. So Jeff Sessions, he's doing something in the States that nobody can wrap their head around at this very moment, I'm sure. He just hosted a visit from some Canadian senators, and they went down there because Jeff Sessions has been on and off the fence about cannabis and its properties, etc. He believes it's some kind of terrible thing, while the states that are profiting from it and helping little kids and everybody else get better health disagree, and they are thankfully going ahead without placing themselves under the idiot thumb of this guy. But he did host some Canadian senators, and I'm going to tell you who they are right now. They're it looks like Denise Batters, as in fish and chips, Pierre Hughes Boisvenu, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. I mean no disrespect, but I am ignorant as to the language of French. And another fellow, I believe his friend Claude Carignan, traveled to Washington, D.C. earlier this month to meet with Sessions. So let's get to the policy, right? Let's figure this thing out. Everybody's coming through with this new substance. And let's get all on the same page in North America, I suppose, was their issue. And according to straight.com, who have, if you go to their www.straight, as in straigt.com, they did an excellent article on yours truly back in the day that was filled with research and accuracy. I'm just saying that because it seems like an ancient relic by today's journalistic standards already. But these folks last week, the Straight reported that 3 Canadian senators took a trip to Washington, D.C. to meet with the anti-legalization groups, also known as the mentally unwell. And the U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the same man who in 2016 uttered the words, "Good people don't smoke marijuana." So I can't even waste the breath to tell him to fuck off. It's bad enough that 3 unelected officials decided to waste taxpayer dollars seeking out the advice of a prohibitionist. And again, once you prohibit it, you don't have access to it properly. You can't get it measured effectively, and it's not going to help as many people as efficiently. So thanks. But it's not nearly as scary as what could happen as a result of their visit. I'm ready! Since returning to Canada, Conservative Senators Denise Batters, Claude Carignan, and Pierre Hughes Boisvenu have been distributing a document among Senate committees that speaks to the alleged threats posed by the legalization of cannabis. And there are threats. It's called awareness. And the more people get on it, the more your job is in peril. So I understand your fight, but you're not going to win. The document, authored by the anti-legalization nonprofit organization Smart Approaches to Marijuana, Smart Approaches to Marijuana, SAM, they call it. I'm sure you could add an R in there someplace and come up with SMARM, is an amalgamation of more than 40 pages of data. Wow! 40 pages of data. Let me see how many pages of data I can hustle on up from pre-prohibition era, when marijuana was called cannabis and they were using it for medicine, then take out the part where they weren't, and then go back to 1963 and Israel's Dr. Raphael Meshulam, and let's go from 63 till just about 8 seconds ago and see how many more pages of documentation to the point of my point we have than these clowns. 40 pages, and probably single-sided, of data concerning the effects of legalization in Washington, Colorado, Oregon, Alaska, and the District of Columbia. Fucking nothing in there from Portugal, where they legalized everything and everything's great. Co-founded by former member of the U.S. House of Reps, Patrick J. Kennedy, son of former Ted Kennedy, and, well, he's former Kennedy, he was just dead, that's all, he's still Ted Kennedy, and author Kevin Sabat of the anti-pot book Reefer Sanity, 7 Great Myths About Marijuana. Got to read that. Sam's sole intention is to convince the American population that cannabis poses the same, if not greater, risks to public health and safety than big tobacco. So it's true, you can earn a fantastic living lying your ass off as long as you do it on the public tit. Its board consists largely of physicians focused on addiction and treatment, as well as clinical... And are they listening to Gabor Mate? No. As well as clinical psychologists and pediatric specialists. But Sam has also recruited people like David Frum, who is the guy who was Canadian, son of a former CBC anchor who was George Bush's speechwriter, who came up with the phrase axis of evil, aka banks that don't have, countries that don't have Rothschild banks in them. Put that at the top of the list. Former speechwriter for George W. Bush and senior editor at The Atlantic, as honorary advisors to the board. David Frum has written a number of op-eds addressing the perils of legal pot. Can we get David Frum in here as a guest? Can I get anybody with balls who counters my word to come in here and actually prove me wrong? I'd fucking love it. I wouldn't have to come here anymore, pushing this rock up a hill. See if you can get David Frum in here. I'm not kidding. You know who I'm talking to out there. Kennedy, who has admitted publicly to struggling with addiction and mental health issues. Okay, great. Well, I'm not good at playing baseball. We're supposed to ban that? Told Yahoo News in 2017 that medical cannabis is simply a Trojan horse designed to addict people. That should give you an idea of the tone of Sam's latest document, which begins by alleging that today's highly potent marijuana is a threat to public safety, without which I wouldn't be sitting here able to tear their shit down, and proceeds to highlight data that has either been refused by studies with greater sample sizes and longer timelines, or fails to serve as Sam's cause at all. Take, for example, this little nugget. Young adult use from 18 to 25 in legalized states is increasing. So you're telling us that a product legalized by the state is being consumed at a greater rate by a demographic that is, for the most part, legally allowed to use it? It's not exactly earth-shattering data. States with a legal cannabis permit possession and use for individual use of age 21 and over. Good stuff, Dan. And while the document relies on information from the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, the NSUDH, fantastic, it's got the word duh in there if you scramble those letters, to point out that Alaska and Oregon are leading the nation in past year cannabis use Among youth aged 12 to 17, it fails to include data from the same organization that found the majority of states with legal cannabis are actually experiencing a downward trend among youth. The senators are lying. The senators are full of shit. Let's get our guests in here before I toss my cookies. That's some cherry picking at its finest, as these folks at the Straight have rightly pointed out. Another stat included in the document suggests that the consumption of alcohol in Colorado has risen by 8% since the state legalized weed, but it fails to point out other contributing factors like the state's rise in population. And between 2014 and 15, Colorado was the second fastest growing state in the United States, with close to 100,000 new residents moving there post-legalization. SAM does itself a disservice by reporting on stats from Washington, D.C., where lawmakers, we have our guests coming in, have only legalized limited personal possession and cultivation of the plant without creating legislation around sale or distribution. That's called not getting your shit together. Remember, these are the people that constantly preach that the cannabis is going to scramble your brains, and every time they try to get their heads around it, you don't even know if it's upside down or in the ground. So it's not exactly an endorsement for clear thinking when these freaks and our senators don't seem to understand that the laws they put together are so fucking stupid a kid with a Lego set could do better. To be clear, residents of D.C. can possess and grow the plant, but they're not allowed to buy it, sell it, or use it in a public area. Oh, it's legal, but don't use it. And with federal land obviously excluded from legalization, there are few places for residents to consume, like in Ontario, where we care about the kids, and the only place you can legally use it is at home, where the kids are, and you can't go to a lounge because it's illegal. Oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack today. So when Sam says public consumption and distribution arrests in the area nearly tripled between 2015 and 16, one must consider the limited parameters of legalization, which is exactly the perfect button to get out of this story. The limited parameters of the senators of Canada latching onto nonsense and trying to shove it down our throats. You are so very fucking wrong. Let's not all panic about chainsaws being dangerous. Let's just learn how they work. What about the children? Teach them. Teach them. I don't know what the hell they're teaching in grade 3, 5, 6, 9, but Vancouver's shitting its pants right now. I don't know if you heard this, but on 420, who is upset the most right now are officials and government people. They're going, oh no, 420? And the kids aren't going to be in school? What about the children? Teach them. Just teach them how it works. You know, you managed to do that with sex ed and everything else. It's not a lot more difficult than that. And you don't require anywhere near as much lube. I'd like to welcome to my studio some folks that are here from Sensible, Ontario. And I'm going to welcome you here. Thanks for coming in. This is the biggest packed situation at the table. I have to swivel around and look at everybody. It's great to have you here. My name is Alan Park, and we have, I don't know who is which yet, but we do have Lisa and Tyler and Zoe. So who's who? You're Tyler. I got that part, man. Okay. Hang on. We don't have the mics. That's my fault. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Here's everybody on. I'm Lisa. You're Lisa. Hi, Lisa. And
I'm Zoe.
Zoe, cool. Okay, great. We're all on there now. And this thing is down. So Zoe of Sensible, Ontario. And these are folks that we're going to hear all about what they are, all about what they do. And just in the few seconds they've been sitting here and acknowledging what their names are, have already offered far more sense than an entire piece I just read on Canadian senators. So we're really getting somewhere already. Thanks for coming. Zoe is involved, has been involved. Oh my goodness, we're having a problem in the studio.
Technical difficulties.
Another person. We will need another chair at this point. Did not know this was happening. We can't do it? We're good. Oh, okay. All right, we're good. It was an earthquake and now we're good. That's nice. Zoe has been involved before with previous companies, including the Allaire vaporizer, which I understand is a good one, have not tried, and she still endorses, though not working there. So that's nice. She was
still working.
Oh, you're still working there. Oh, okay. Well, then it was a commercial. Zoe is involved in branding and packaging of many items regarding cannabis, and that might sound boring as hell to a lot of people if they don't know what's going on, but you do have to brand it to sell it. Some companies are different than others, as we've been told, And the packaging is essentially how we sell anything. And unfortunately, there are another series of what I understand to be restrictive rules around packaging. And then Tyler is here, and Lisa is here, and Sensible Ontario is what?
Sensible Ontario is a grassroots organization to help promote the inclusion of dispensaries and lounges in the upcoming legal landscape.
Okay.
Yeah, we're really pushing for a mixed model in the province. It's because we realize that with how things have progressed, at least, under the current liberal leadership, that it would be hard to kind of discount the strides that they've made in kind of setting up the public sector regime as it is.
Okay, so I'm maxed out, so you got to talk a little closer to the mic and the people. I can totally hear you. That's
Perfect.
Awesome. Just get right on it. They're designed to take your voice, and we want to hear everything you have to say, so that's cool. And yourself over there, what have you got to say? Just put the mic right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, we've been
There we go.
running Sensible Ontario since last spring. It's a coalition, so we've brought together all different drug policy organizations that are passionate about progressive cannabis policy, and we're focusing on Ontario and retail.
Okay, real quick, I just want to ask if Sensible Ontario has anything to do with the BC Sensible Party. We had
Sensible BC.
Sensible BC, yeah.
Yeah, we're inspired by Sensible BC, so we're basically using their playbook for
nice.
political strategy.
That's how it works.
Yeah, so we just finished our first poll on cannabis retail, and we found that Ontarians want cannabis to be regulated like alcohol, ironically. So that means not just having government stores, but also having, venues like bars, like where we are right now, where,
Right.
they can consume and also dispense cannabis.
Right. Okay, and you're working towards that. So that's it. You were satisfied with you came across the BC playbook and said, this is cool, we got to bring it over home here?
Yeah, well, luckily for us, Dana Larson, who runs Sensible BC, was super supportive. So we've been working with them using Nation Builder to reach out to over 11,000 Ontarians to take action in Ontario.
Dana Larson, of course, is the activist who, among many other things, has great products that'll help you ease your pain using cannabis, and got in a lot of trouble giving away free seeds to people. Apparently that's a crime. We do have an interview of him coming along at some point when I need it. I thought it was going to be this week when I couldn't talk for the whole week. But we'll get to that soon as a special edition, maybe something on 420, an additional program. So let's go back to branding and packaging for a second. Where were you at in your head and in your plans before the most recent far more restrictive regulations were announced?
Well, I think even despite the most recent announcements, I'm still up in the clouds. Like I see a bright future for cannabis packaging. I think it's a really exciting avenue, and I'm trying not to let the rules kind of get me down, because it's an avenue in which some of the players in this industry have really gone above and beyond, and where some players have really not put in much thought. So for me as a designer, I'm inspired. I'm inspired by cannabis. I'm inspired by what exists and what is possible. Those restrictions are put in place for good reasons and maybe not so good reasons, but one of the main reasons is to keep cannabis away from kids,
Right.
which I totally support. I think that you absolutely nailed it. Education is the key, and I think that can start with packaging. I think that we can educate our consumers on not going for certain products because they have maybe a flashy logo or like a caricature, but
Right.
really reading what you're buying into. Something I think that Big Pharma missed out on in a huge way with their packaging, that I think cannabis can maybe change the state of play a little bit.
So you didn't get a little slapped in the face when you thought, oh, what? And then you saw some of these little packages, like the name of the company real tiny and it's what it is, and it's really boring?
Sure. My heart sank a little bit for
Yeah.
sure. But I mean, you put those regulations in place, and for an artist or a designer, it's really just, all right, that's the next challenge. How can I use this and still get
Walk
my
right
message
up to the
across?
line.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, what we did and will continue to do is, I understand you can't have famous people advertising anything cannabis related.
Yeah.
And when I had Paul Hartman in here, and he is such a great guy, and he's basically going to teach me a lot of things I don't know and need to know, I decided that what we should do is just have us imitate famous movie posters. So there he is as Sean Connery with my Harrison Ford and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Vaughn is the Raiders of the Green Crusade or whatever. And it's like, oh, you're going to charge me for imitating a famous person. We'll just keep hitting it. So that's how we got around it.
It's good.
And it looks more interesting than just a blank screen that says Green
Exactly.
Crush.
Yeah, so this is like an artistic approach to the workaround. So it's not, fighting it. It's, okay, fine, you're going to say that's the rules. I'm going to find a creative and hopefully more educational
Isn't that
way
amazing?
around it.
Another creative way. And why is that? It's part of the cannabis intake on its own. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
So you're working with that, and you're going to be doing that for... I can't wait to get some ideas and tell us what you thought you were going to be getting towards, and then you had to change gears when the plan came out.
Totally, and I mean it reaches across all channels. I think with like the branding of Sensible Ontario, it's been a really interesting experiment. We have been playing around with what our community wants to see in terms of activism, but as well how to reach a broader audience. Really, Sensible Ontario is about more inclusion. So communities that traditionally haven't gone out for 420 events or cannabis events. How can we capture them? And really it is a branding exercise because you'll see on social media people are attracted to colors, fonts, shapes, faces.
That's age old, isn't it? Yeah,
totally.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well, that's cool. Tyler, what's exactly, and don't look at me too much so much as tell the folks about it.
Yeah, fair enough.
But tell me what your involvement is with this.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really assisting, I'd say, Sensible more so on the outreach aspect. So reaching out to certain political parties and having those conversations.
All of them?
Discussing absolutely. So, the Liberal Party refused and declined to speak with us, like vehemently declined to speak with us.
You bastard. I almost did a spit take with honey tea right in your face.
I actually saw you at the first, I'm pretty sure it was you, at the first Kathleen Wynne Town Hall at the Masonic Temple in Toronto.
If this was a real show, I'd go, can we throw that up? And we'd play it, and I'd show it to you. You're dead right. That was on September 20th, and took her down best I could.
Thank you, and you absolutely did. And I waited till the very end to give her my card.
Oh, you went after the thing,
exactly.
and she got mobbed, huh?
She got mobbed. Like, I waited. I was patient. I gave her my card. I'm like, hi, I'm Tyler James. I'm with Sensible Ontario, and at the time I was working with the medicinal dispensary Eden. And I'm like, I'd love to give you my card and have you down our location. I'd love to just give you some of our policy papers on where we think we can work together and best help the community.
And how quickly did she tear up that card?
How quickly did one of her minders yoink
Are you
serious? Out of her? And then the thing was, at the time we had plug for Council PA Public Affairs. They were
do it. You're here to plug
of,
all of these things, by the way.
Yeah,
so.
Council PA, they were really assisting us again with the government relations aspect, so that we can get in front of the right policymakers and political parties. And they actually brought it up, Council PA, Caroline from the council mentioned that someone within Kathleen Wynn's camp brought up that I was there and that I was so polite and cordial and gave her the card. And Caroline asked her, so do you guys want to meet with them at all? Anybody? And they were still no.
They don't want to meet.
At all. They don't want to, which is ironic given the recent, you know what I mean?
Well, she closed her little thing with me with, I just hit her for 3.5 minutes with a fire hose. I knew they were going to say, what's your question? Yeah. But I just thought I'd keep going until.
Absolutely.
And I hit her with the question. She gave me a typical politician non-answer. Said, close that out with, but this is a conversation we're going to continue having. Can I get somebody to talk about something else, please?
Yeah.
And I have been tweeting her and closing mine with just continuing the conversation, Kathleen. Of course, she can't do it.
Well, she's pitching it to the feds. She's saying that this is a federal government issue, and that's really part of the problem is that it's not.
That's shirking the issue. Yeah. Exactly. I don't live in the federal government. I live in her, so to speak, jurisdiction. And if you notice, different provinces in the country, and how could you not when there are 10 of them, all have a different way of going about things. So how are they locked into the federal overarching system? And she has to be, they're not, and she is. Well, that doesn't make any sense. She's not all there. She tweets about rights all the time, and she says, it's so great. I met a bunch of moms today, and we're getting a healthcare thing together so that these women can empower themselves and, get out there, and that's their right. And it's like, you're focusing on there's nothing wrong with that, right? But why do you completely ignore an economy? Did you hear that thing I was talking about in the States where they're going to legalize hemp, and this is going to be an industry that's going to foment jobs, and it's going to bring it on home, and you can synthesize oil from it instead of in the ground in Saudi Arabia where we beholden to their interests. You can actually make oil that runs cars. Biodiesel oil, otherwise oils, plastics, everything. It's sitting there in the ground growing. These people are ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of speaks to a part of our poll that showed that a majority of PC voters in Ontario back the privatization of cannabis.
Right, but then you got Doug Ford, and everybody's freaking out, and I predict that he will win by some measure.
He absolutely will. But at least from like what we've been hearing and talking heads, the reason why he kind of had to backtrack is, although he himself, everybody knows, is
what was that
friendly,
overnight? What was that all about?
Because it's the party. Like, everybody's like, oh, he's backpedaling. He has to, because at that point, Doug Ford realized that it's not Doug Ford's party.
Right.
It's the PC party.
I love that. He came out and he said, basically, tell us, do you know what he said? Doug Ford, when he came out and said...
At first he said that the government shouldn't be involved in private industry.
Right.
And that it wasn't up to government to
And that he was
going
to make sure that, and it was a super powerful, positive thing for us. And I'm sitting there going, I hate the fact that this guy's saying everything I want a politician to say.
But then within 24 hours, he flip-flopped. So it's hilarious because Doug Ford hates when other people flip-flop, and he always calls them out for it. But then Dougie flip-flopped within 24 hours. He said that if it was up to him, there wouldn't even be legalization.
Which is another flop on the flop of the flip.
It's a super flop, especially since he used to sell hash.
Super flop. Shut the hell up.
Allegedly.
I mean,
did he acknowledge? I don't know this because I get hypertension, whenever I see a picture of his face, and I go, I need to know these issues, but I don't need. I'll die. I'll pop out. So did he acknowledge at least that he did say that thing about the positivity nature about how to get it into private business? Let's get going, because he did flop out of it.
In a roundabout way, he did.
Yeah.
In a roundabout way.
Roundabout way?
Said,
like around his waistband?
It was the long way around that he beat around a big bush, let's say.
Yeah.
Because he mentioned that, as Lisa put it, that if it was up to him, it wouldn't be legalized, which I think is just a lie, because personally I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
But then he said, he wants to see how the OCR, or I guess the OCS, rolls it out and go from there. And that speaks to a lot of, I guess, the internal documents.
OCS, of course, for folks not knowing, is the smoke cannabis outlet that is owned by or controlled by, or what is the same thing as the Liquor Control Board of Ontario, and now they're Ontario Cannabis Store.
Precisely.
Is that right? Okay.
And he was mentioning that, he wants to see how that goes first. But that really speaks to some internal conflicts that they were having, because in our poll, as it found that majority of conservatives are in favor of privatization. However, the conservative nature as a party, as he stated, they wouldn't want legalization in the first place. And again, that kind of speaks to even more of the religious basis and them as a party.
It doesn't really, though. It speaks to the uninformed religious basis.
Well, true, but that's still very much a conservative religious base.
It's a lenient form of privatization. So when we speak about privatization, it's for the benefit. For the benefit of small business groups to develop cannabis, the industry in Ontario. But in terms of the conservatives, it's more along the lines of keeping it out of the hands of children. And yes, that's a part of the conversation, but it shouldn't really be at the forefront.
No.
Every step of the way.
But there's a lot of things we need to keep out of the hands of children. If you just walk up and down the aisles of Home Depot. So where are we with that then? I mean, here we have this conservative guy who said, yeah, let's do private. Oh, no, we're not going to do that. I said that day, as soon as he flopped, I went, someone very powerful picked up a telephone as soon as they saw that article and got him to spin. Mm-hmm. Those are the interests that I'd like to find out where they are. Some kind of club down on Bay Street or something. I don't know.
The caucus. Yeah. They're really scared of legalization because it alienates their religious base. It also alienates suburban and rural voters. It's the same with the Liberals. I think all political parties are really scared to talk about legalization. The one thing that our poll found is that it affects the way that people vote, which could affect it in a positive way or a negative way. So no one wants to lose votes by supporting legalization, but it's part of conservative values to have private industry and not have government monopolies. So, Dougie said that he's against monopolies. When it comes to the LCBO, they want to privatize the LCBO. If the LCBO runs OCS, then that means they want to privatize it all, essentially. It's just going to take a long time for them to come out of the closet and for it to be socially acceptable in that way.
I would love it if Doug Ford came out of the closet. I swear to God.
As a hash dealer?
No, just came out of the closet. That'd be hilarious. I don't understand it, though, because then on the other side, you do have the Liberal Party who have offered this paradigm of nonsense and restriction. And that's the best bet we have right now for them to win? I mean, what happens if the Conservatives win and they jettison the entire thing and we're back to 1971 or something?
It's a bit of a scary prospect to go back to the drawing board. But at this
can
point,
we do that?
I believe we can. Yes.
No, but
and,
I mean, can we move ahead with it in any way and enforce it? Like, how could the province of Ontario elect a political party that says we're not doing this, and they kick it out because at the overtop is the Canadian government. You can't tell Ontario they can't do something the rest of the country can.
So for the federal government has said that unless it's up to the provinces, but if they don't come up with a retail solution or program, then licenses would be distributed, or there would be a licensing program in the province, which ironically is kind of what we're asking for. But no plan is not a good plan either. So what we're hoping for is that part of the work that Sensible Ontario is trying to push forward is that this is an election issue, and we want to hear from our candidates what their plan is. So if Doug Ford doesn't want to go fully public, what's your plan? If Andrea Horvath is thinking a mixed model, what's your plan? We want to know.
Yeah, and to what Zoe's saying, like, there is a constructive way forward, and I really think that the worst case scenario will effectively be, every party right now wish-washing on the issue, maybe not making it a platform issue, but waiting and letting the OCS fall on its face before they introduce a mixed model, because the OCS has already done so much work, and they're already in the throes of, picking locations, like the problem that they have not consulting a community up in Toronto about that location, right? Like, they're already in the throes of all that already, that to have them pull that money out, I think would, just be at the detriment to taxpayers. So that's why I think the best way forward is a mixed model. It allows them to, at least from now, at least have 40 stores somewhat established to somewhat meet demand day one, but then allow for, all things being equal, knock on wood, a new party coming in, to use that time between June to September, October, when, you'll actually be able to walk in those stores, to work with maybe the private sector to have that mixed model. And it wouldn't take long. If you look at Alberta, prime example, they did consultations, bam, spoke to the community. They went to the private sector,
model in
bam.
Alberta.
No, they're doing privatization, but how they're rolling it out in terms of consulting with the community, consulting with the private sector, just having their ducks in a row when it comes to a licensing regime and making sure that they have the timelines, while every other province is kicking and screaming. Alberta's getting the job done, and they're showing that it doesn't take you to reinvent the wheel to get the job done.
So she is Rachel Notley. She is of the NDP. I was just about to want to bring them into the conversation more fully. So that's what the NDP are doing, huh?
It's actually a mixed model in that they have government online retail. So there's, a Crown corporation that's selling cannabis along with private retail, and it's the same with BC. It's a mixed model. They have brick and mortar government stores and then also private stores, and they're integrating existing dispensaries in British Columbia, so they have more of a social justice mandate to include the existing industry.
This is fascinating because I've heard a lot of, I'll just come out and say it, sexist and I don't know what the other word I'm looking for is, but hatred towards Rachel Notley, who, if she's screwing everything up in Alberta, how would they know after 612 years of conservative rule? So it seems to me you got to give her a pass somewhat for get a little time and build her own piece of cheese. But I'm kind of impressed that you guys are telling me that she's doing this, because it sounds very ahead of the game compared to a lot of other distribution systems.
Yeah, relatively speaking, it is a progressive move. And
oh, God, what happened to you?
If you look
there you are.
Am I there?
You got to get right on it. Like,
Okay.
Don't worry about it, okay? We're just doing a radio show. That's all it is. We'll give you a neck massage later.
Cypher right now. Get in it.
Right? I think it's important that we look to, municipalities in British Columbia and recognize that they saw what the communities needed and they responded to it, and they listened to their citizens. And what?
Wait a minute, hang on.
I know,
what
it's
kind
crazy.
of bullshit are you throwing on me here?
It's wild, isn't it? I mean, that it's nutty that they actually listened to their communities, and in a place where the opioid crisis is so detrimental to their society, this is really important stuff. And Toronto, yes, we've had whisperings of this, Moss Park, like, yes, people are using drugs. This is a really real reality.
Like that's ever not been the case.
Yeah, exactly. That people are dying from these things. And if we don't step up and listen to our communities and what they need on a municipal level, then we're going to miss out.
Hang on to that point for a second. I just want to say, don't they have a lot of religious communities in Alberta that, as you said, the other folks that are religious don't get that, and they do have that in Alberta. Why do they get away with this? Or how do they pull that, stick handle it?
I think that companies like Aurora, which, are working with government to build out massive grow operations, are kind of showing government and the mainstream population that this is an industry that's building jobs. In Alberta, which is a province that's losing jobs because the oil industry is kind of tanking.
It is. And it is tanking. And given the big-time jobs in Alberta is basically you're in the oil game, which can be brutal. When I toured through comedy up there, I learned that what goes on at Fort McMurray. Guys lying on their back at 70 below, jerking around with these giant things for 2 weeks at way too much money. And then when they get their break in time, like 10 days on, 4 days off, or whatever the hell, come to the bars and get completely plastered, lose all that money, and go back and do it again. If I had to do that, or if I had to work in a slaughterhouse rendering plant up to my neck in dead animals all the time, I think I'd rather be wandering around a greenhouse, tending the little green plants and getting that together, and they have the square footage for it in Big Sky Country, so they should get on that. You had a point.
Yeah, just to really mention that, to Zoe's point about the opiate crisis, is that, when I was working with Eden Medicinal Society, they had that great program where, they were working with the community to offer outreach to individuals who were at risk and who wanted to, shift their illicit cannabis focus, let's say, to something that was cannabis-based, natural, where they can kind of wean themselves off of that kind of opiate addiction. And this was something that, we went to great lengths to show the government, if you have safe injection sites, which I fully condone and support, but if safe injection sites can now in Toronto administer some narcotics, why is it that we cannot work with these safe injection sites or any clinic to administer cannabis
in a similar without injecting it?
And it's so much, it's cheaper for the government, it's more healthy for the individual, and it actually helps the individual rehabilitate their life.
And let's toss in that most people want to do that, and now you're into democracy and majority rule and all that thing, and they don't want to honor that either.
Well, yeah, hence why the Green Party candidate can't even speak at the next public debate, which I think
is that a fact?
Yeah,
you mean here in Ontario? Or?
Yeah, here in Ontario, they're having a debate between all the political parties, and
Kathleen Wynne doesn't want to hear this guy. What's his name?
Mike Schreiner.
Mike Schreiner. Yeah. Can I get a spelling on that?
SCHREINER. Yes.
Okay, let's get him in.
Yeah.
Let's get him in. I'll let him speak. We can sit here for 2 hours.
He's got some great insights into cannabis policy. I think just to Tyler's point about this kind of goes back around to education, right? So yes, the poll kind of showed us that people want to know more. They want a little bit more information on how a lounge works or how a dispensary works. So we don't necessarily have everybody kind of on our side yet, but the whole point of Sensible Ontario is to make sense of what's going on. So whether Doug Ford is saying X about lounges or Kathleen is imposing Y about dispensaries, it's the people's opinion should be forming what our governments offer us in terms of policy, not the other way around.
Right.
And cannabis users or consumers vote. Like, we're voters, and a lot of us are in the closet, but I think it's 30% of Ontarians are consumers. So why are you going to exclude 30% of the vote?
Base.
Well, 30% is huge, number one. Okay, fine. Let's just leave it at 30. Maybe it's 26. Maybe it's 34. Let's call it 30. Not only are they on board, and I'm one of them, and so would you all be. You've also got the family and the relatives and the loved ones who don't participate in this, but don't necessarily want to see the folks in the family that do doing hard time.
But I got a tidbit for you. This kind of even goes back to like what you're talking about in Aurora, the employment piece. A lot of times people don't realize the ancillary business that this will create.
Oh, they have no idea.
Like when we talk about having dispensaries, we're talking about when Eden was operating in Toronto, they had security guards for the morning shift and the evening shift.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had, and we all know that GTA can at least do with 100 dispensaries.
At least.
That would be 200, security working positions or I guess roles then available that could be filled. On top of that, for each of those, like let's say 100 stores, those 100 stores then need distribution. So you then have firms who are then distributing it from the OCS warehouse to the location. So those are courier companies that are doing it. You then have security firms, mechanical and electrical, HVAC contractors that then have to build out these dispensaries to meet compliance of the municipality or the province. The ancillary business that this creates is so resounding.
And that's just bricks and mortar. I mean, we haven't even touched the tourism aspect, the
branding,
entertainment
marketing
aspect. Exactly.
Like for the online realm, it's actually what people need to realize is that this is going to be a global first, and within this global first, Ontario is the biggest market effectively globally in this first license regime, and yet we are not taking accountability for it. We're over $300 billion in debt as a province, more than California.
Well, there's a small hitch to it, right? So you're absolutely right, but the real issue is that Toronto, the special little gem that it is submerged in a province that doesn't always agree. So the politics in Ontario aren't always the politics in Toronto, and we're kind of cursed by this because, yes, arguably the largest cannabis
Toronto
market
could be its own province.
Exactly.
Okay, we have talked about
we're
that.
an island.
But I'd just like to take a couple of seconds. We do have to do a commercial right now, so here we go. If you could just let me get the floor together here. Oh, yeah. Hey, got some good news for you. I was just recently, last week, I was invited to speak at an organization called the PCMA. This is the Private Capital Markets Association. Makes a lot of the high, heavy rollers on Bay Street look like the same fellas that dole out popcorn at Cineplex. These people were high, heavy rollers, and they brought me in to speak for half an hour, and then I was going to have a little something to eat and get on my way about half an hour later. I spoke, and I told them my medical story and my turnaround, and they were all agape, and they gave me a little more time. I told them the whole thing, and I close with this at the end. You've all heard that this stuff doesn't work. You've all heard government officials tell you that the health aspects of cannabis are not what they are. And I'm here to tell you that's completely untrue. I'm living proof of it. I have the documentation. I've taken myself off the slab, and now I get to have this situation with folks sitting here telling me fantastic things about the truth. And I closed by telling them that I was not being paid to be there. There was no cannabis company bringing me in and giving me money to do this. I was completely unbacked. I'd like to say I went in there with my own money, but the only money I used was to get down there in a taxi. And they were all freaking out. And I was meant to leave at about 3 o'clock, and I didn't get out till about 7:40 that evening. And that's kind of another reason why I was talking over a lot of music and cocktails and got all talked out. So I have done my best at this point to try to attract investment. And I say, if you guys get this thing moving, the government's going to have to catch up. These folks are not going to invest deeply and be told they can't get it going on. So that's all I wanted to tell you about the PCMA. Okay, back to the show. Where were we? Okay, so what was the first time you are conscious of the time you got high?
I think I was... Can I say this? I was a teenager.
Well, you can tell the truth. Just tell the truth. I will have to cop to that same thing. So
I remember it was on the Toronto Island.
Oh, wow.
And there was like a group of us.
So you had a little baggie, went over on the ferry?
Not even. My friends were smoking a joint, and I got to smoke the roach, and it was like the most exciting moment of my life.
A dirty, stinky roach at that
so
point.
gross.
And you were spitting it out, but you got a little buzz on it?
I definitely got a little buzz. I can remember learning like the difference between indica and sativa, and that being like
You
so
knew that?
fascinating.
Oh, wow. Good for you.
I think there's a lot of myths. I mean, indica sativa is arguably still a myth, but
Yeah.
I remember like learning about
Oh.
indica and being like, whoa.
What do you mean they're a myth? The two.
Well, there's so many hybrids these days that
yeah.
folks,
I
traditionally
think
say
it's all in there, and it's going to lean more to the indica, or it's going to lean more, but they're both in there, and this is because of the breeding and changing things over time. So it's great to have both, but there's predominance in the strains.
For
right?
sure, consumers still believe in the dichotomy between indica and sativa, but
I
it's more
do.
the terpenes,
terpene profiles
that affect the actual physical effects of the plant.
And tell us what a terpene is.
Oh, okay. I'm not a science major,
That's okay.
but
Good. You know what it is. You said the word.
Okay,
You're
I
swinging
did.
it around
I
like a
did.
hammer.
Damn
Let's
it.
go.
Okay, terpenes are found in naturally organic substances like trees and plants, and also cannabis.
Like pine needles and
Papayas,
Oranges.
limonene,
Yeah.
oranges, and they kind of they can be procured in like a liquidy, oily kind of substance that some vape pen manufacturers use to dilute their oils. So it's a safer alternative to thinning agents.
This is a vape pen right here. I'll show you.
Is it a
folks, that I have.
terpene
I don't know
reinfused?
exactly what it is, but it is
interesting.
wonderful.
Okay.
This is a CBD situation. That's
Beautiful.
why I puffed it. I didn't rip through the other one that's got the green rubber band on it because I'm on camera and they know that I'm doing this. But this is the CBD little pen, and it's pretty cool.
Nice.
Zing, zing, and it works.
Veridesco one, I think.
Pardon me?
Veridesco.
I don't know what you're saying.
Nice.
Oh, the brand name?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
think
I don't know. It's it just says GV on it. Green. Oh, hang on. Green I don't know what that says. Green apony or something.
Is it CO2
Green vapor.
or?
This is. I don't know all the things.
Yeah.
I'm not a scientist.
We're weed
either.
nerds.
But I don't know.
We're dorks.
You know.
But essentially, terpenes are a really useful component in telling you what you're going to get from your cannabis. So it's not only about the smell and the flavor, but like Lisa was saying, the physical effects. So certain terpene profiles can have a different kind of effect on your brain, on your body, on your muscles, on your endocannabinoid system, which, as we know, is located in every organ of our body.
Yeah.
And terpenes can tell you, like, you know, a certain strain might help with, you know, post chemotherapy, or might help with suppressing an appetite or inducing an appetite. And more people are saying that, as opposed to saying things like it's a sativa, it's a hybrid, it's an indica, you want to use more strain specific profile attributes like this. You will find pinene and limonene in this, and that will produce this. It's almost it's more of a safe bet, if that's a
Well,
fair
did
thing
we
to
come
say.
across this because of cannabis? I mean, if we weren't smoking cannabis, we were still getting terpenes when we chewed on a pine needle or had a papaya.
Absolutely. I would say that it's because it's found outside of cannabis that there's been research into it, that's kind of the foray into it in terms of biology and organic chemistry. What we need now is for pharmaceutical companies and for cannabis companies to do more terpene profile like annotation, so that we can more understand more intricately what these terpenes do.
Right.
But because they exist in other substances, like, for example, cannabis is a cousin of hops, which you use in beer.
Right.
And you know how beer sometimes can make you sleepy?
Yes.
Myrcene is the...
Fully aware of this reaction.
Myrcene is the prominent terpene in hops.
What's
and
the name of it?
Myrcene.
Can you spell that for us?
Myrcene.
Okay.
So it's also
So
in
there's
cannabis.
terpenes in beer. And,
So if something's really heavy in myrcene, you're going to get sedative effects. If it's heavy in, say, limonene, it's just like aromatherapy. If you sniff a lemon, you feel awake,
zips
and
you up.
energized.
Lemon in the water in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Danny? And what's your experience with your initial turn at the old herb?
Oh, that was... I still remember it to this day. I was 15. It was after school, went to...
He gave her a hard time.
And went to my buddy, or my buddy's brother's...
Tyler.
Yeah, exactly. And literally grabbed a bag of shake from his brother.
And what is shake again? I forget. I don't get it.
It was like just like the remnant bits.
What's left over when you're making buds?
Like
It's just
buds
whatever
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like he rolled like this massive like L paper, and this was the first time like me seeing
a
somebody
massive
roll
paper.
It. And I was like,
this is your first time?
Yeah, like it's amazing.
So you had a tiny little stinking roach.
Yeah, we had this massive thing of shake.
Wow.
And I remember just us smoking it at the park. And then I remember us getting so high that me and my buddy were sharing like headphones, like the earbuds, and we were listening to Eminem, Superman, and like we were. I was like,
so you're walking?
Yeah, and we're walking
two
up
guys
the
tethered.
street. Yeah, tethered in the street, and we're like rapping to it. Like as we're laughing, I had like a snot bubble out of my nose.
Beautiful.
Because I couldn't stop laughing so much.
Oh wow! And that snot bubble was packed with terpenes.
Yeah, exactly. And then we like end up going to the subway, and all I remember is like half like laughing and chomping on my food, but just like mainly just like dying hysterically of just nothing. It was the best experience of my life.
Wow.
Still remember it to this day.
That's incredible. And now you, Miss Manners, with I can't be doing it under the age of whatever.
I've never smoked pot. No,
I beg your pardon. Get out.
My first time smoking pot, I was pretty young too. I was 13. I was 12 or 13.
Now what the hell are
with
you
a
doing
babysitter.
giving these two
hey,
shit?
I know. You know, that's a bit hypocritical. I was raised in a very kind of like typical 90s Toronto community, like 5 families with all their kids.
As long as you realize it, because hypocrisy is going around this city we need a
is.
flu shot for it.
Oh man. But I'm blessed. Like I was introduced to cannabis by people who were slightly older than me, who were introduced to it by people that were slightly, it's kind of generational passing down of this like torch, and it was the greatest gift because like I wasn't raised to be afraid of it. I was raised to kind of learn about it and educate myself around it. And even though my parents have never really, not in my life, never really smoked pot, they were always like, that's fine if you want to do it, but like do it safely, do it at home, learn about it, don't do it with strangers, like the good stuff, right? And it's really kind of helped me get behind everything that we do because
but if it's not taboo,
it's for the kids.
It's easier to talk about.
Absolutely.
I mean, if fishing were illegal, it would be difficult to obtain the poles. You'd have to get the kind of pack down, and then you got to get the little hook because that's dangerous. And you would have to try to teach a kid how to use it. And, you're throwing it. You don't want it to get your shirt or your skin when you cast. So many problems with the fishing rod. Oh, my God. Teach a kid how to use it.
Yeah.
And, then there's
this movement towards normalization. A big part of it is to protect our youth and protect our kids, because you're right, kids should not be smoking pot. They should be doing kid stuff.
They should.
But if they are educated about it, then they won't fear it and they won't be intimidated by it. They probably won't be that interested in it, because it's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go be a kid now. Like, I don't need
way
to.
less cool now too.
Make
everyone I know who's in their 20s is like.
You could make
cool
it square.
Yeah.
The old saying about how grown-ups and older people were square. They had that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Kids might, if we kind of reverse the paradigm, like, oh God, they're smoking pot again, those idiots, and I'm just going to go on the swing set, and play.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's it. So when you guys are out there on the you're in here today, you're out there on the hustings telling people how this works. Have you? How long have you been involved? Like a year now, pretty much, right?
With Sensible,
So
but we've all been on our.
We're pretty close to that
path.
same situation here with the show. We came on in July, so we're kind of getting close to it. But so I've spent a lot of time, and even in that time, I've seen shifting attitudes from different people. I know of a case where an older woman who, talk about square. God, I won't name her name because there's no need to do that. But just to say, she was a much older woman in a lot of pain all the time. And you open up her cupboard, and there's 8 million prescription tablets, and you have to take this one as soon as you get up, and this one's an hour before you eat. But don't have that one an hour till after you eat, and she's all messed up. And trying to get her to take cannabis was a friggin' joke. There was no way. It's illegal. It's bad. And some cookies were made, and she didn't know about it, and covertly got onto this thing and proclaimed to the surrounding folks that she was feeling quite good, and she didn't understand how she was loosed up and enjoying herself. And then her cohort admitted that she had done this to her and given her a cookie, and she said, well, when can I get some more? So it just takes the experience rather than the propaganda,
right?
Don't you think, to sort of take it on? I wonder what Kathleen Wynn's first time with pot was.
I can't even imagine Kathleen Wynn smoking pot.
She did it at one point. Come on.
Oh, for sure
I'm
she
making a
smoked pot.
supposition. I don't have data for
sure
this. But
she's dabbled in the Green Giant, 100%. I think that privately she's probably maybe a very different person. Who knows, right? Like there's a whole party involved in this, right? It's not just it's not a woman. It's not a one-woman army.
No,
our politicians, we often like to put them on some sort of pedestal, but like at the end of the day, I would love to sit down with her and be like, can we just talk about it? Can we just have a conversation about what this plant is and what it could be? Because you're putting it in a box. Your party is putting it in a box.
Yeah, well, it's not like I didn't try, so I did the best I could.
And thank you for that.
That's okay. I'd like to be able to do better than that. I'd like to get
oppose.
Bill Blair in that way and
Hell
Justin
yes.
Trudeau himself, but we put stuff out of these folks. They just pretend like we're not here.
This is a big
like it's
problem.
not
They
an
don't want to
issue.
consult with us. They don't want to have a conversation with the pre-existing industry. They try to kind of push this mentality of like, no, cannabis is new. This is a new market. This is a new consumer base. And when in fact it's not. It's not only is it not new, it's educated. It's powerful. It votes. It is a part of our society, and to continuously deny that, especially in a province like Ontario, is disrespectful. It is Canada already has such a hard time of bolstering our own culture.
Sure.
This is a big part of who we are.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, you guys are of Ontario. Y'all born here?
Yep.
In Toronto or various other
Toronto.
parts. I do know somewhat of the jurisdiction of Hamilton, more than any other probably jurisdiction that I didn't come from in this province, say more than Thunder Bay or anything else. And I understand that they've got a fascinating identity unto themselves. A lot of people, make fun of the Tiger Cats and whatever, but they have 67 dispensaries at this second while we record this. And I wonder, how do you folks imagine in the sensible party? And so far, that's all I've heard from you. So you're obviously not really politicians. This is a fraud. You can't be sensible politicians. You got to figure out another name to get traction on this.
It's too much of an oxymoron.
It's a nice prototype. But they have 67 dispensaries. They might have had more at one time. I don't know. But 67 is 27 more in Hamilton, which is not exactly a burgeoning metropolis. And Hamilton is within Ontario. beside Toronto, which is a burgeoning metropolis. How are we going to manage with 40 official legal outlets of the OCS? Who knows why they're putting some in areas that don't want them and not putting them in other areas that are begging
besides
for them.
schools
Or wherever. You know, what is going on when we do this shift and you're supposed to go, okay, Kathleen, here's everything I still have left over. Let me throw it in the garbage like it's an amnesty on a gun exchange thing. And the rest of us are going to all deal with 40 stores across this gigantic province. Let's look at it as Texas compared to the United States biggest province kind of thing, or one of them. And you're going to put 67 dispensaries right now in Hamilton. And later on, there's going to be 40 across. Like, have you looked at the illogic or the logistics of how this is going to stumble into existence?
It's incredible. I mean, we're talking about increased raids, increased arrests, tying up our court system even more than it already is.
Sure,
like, they want to increase the penalties and the fines after legalization for cannabis sale, which, you know, maybe makes sense in the legislation, but in practice, this is going to totally screw our province.
So you could see Bill Blair crafting this whole thing. It's like, as soon as they said, you know what, there's public pressure, it's been decades, let's bring this thing on. Let's bring in marijuana for everybody. Who should we consult about this? A bunch of cops that are going to lose their jobs. They're going to lose the man-hour pay because if you take off. Hang on a second. I'm just saying, in the paradigm of actually making it happen, you would have, like, if it were really legalized, you'd have to look at every single officer's man-hours that he dedicates or she dedicates towards the cannabis issue, whether it's patrolling, arresting, doing the paperwork, going to court, following it up. If you subtract that from your daily duties, officer, you've got all of a sudden less stuff to do. And if you apply that to every single officer in the nation and each column on an Excel spreadsheet, all of a sudden we don't need as many cops.
Serious
we don't need as big a budget.
Yes.
I would disagree insofar as the issue that Toronto, at least Toronto's facing right now, is that we are actually at a deficiency of police, and that's really why there are issues with cardings and stuff like that, because police just don't have the time or enough time to actually do real policing work. So it's half-ass carding and roughing up like minorities and people of color that allows them to hit their targets.
That's absolutely true.
And we have to remember, like, the police were fighting for more dollars even before the dispensary proliferation had happened. So the issue and how to really combat it, obviously, as we know, is by introducing, mixed model. But the black market, which existed even before dispensaries, is just going to pick up where it left off. It's not going to skip a single beat.
That's going to be the Band-Aid across the dispensary, 40 dispensaries.
And to be quite honest, like, every politician that I know and that I've been speaking to knows that this model is tarnished because of that. Because if you have only 40 stores, you're proliferating the black market. Because to be quite honest,
they know that too. Those fucking
I'm not
people
going
know
to
that.
walk 6 blocks to a OCS store if I'm lucky, if it's 6 blocks, to get weed, especially when you could get it anywhere else.
I mean, we're already starting to see this with TPS. They've kind of started to reject what their mandate is. Like, there have been incidents of police who refuse to wear their uniforms to raids. They don't report the raids as often or at all sometimes. Like, there is a pushback, and they recognize that they are tying up our courts. They're tying up the tax-paying dollars for TPS, and it's becoming a massive deficit in our city. On top of the $300 billion deficit we're already facing. I mean, it's ludicrous. We could be increasing the profitability of this instead of
There's
taking
an entire
more money
industry
out of it.
ready to hemorrhage right into that debt, and flatten it all
Huge.
out. Why don't they? This is the part that gets into the conspiracy part of the show that I talk about. That's what this show is entirely, Green Crush Conspiracy Queries. This thing you just said about, and they know that. They know that the black market is going to exist the more repression there is. I don't know if you youngsters were aware of the fact that when cigarettes in Ontario back about 20-something years ago were $3 a pack or something, $3.50, for regular cigarettes, pushing $4. The government at the time, under who I can't remember, probably the Conservatives, I don't remember, I think so. They decided that because they're not healthy and they're a danger, that they would charge $10 a pack. So right away, that was the day the black market was born. The natives across the river in the Kingston area, the Oka natives, were going down to the American outlets, purchasing cheap as hell cigarettes for $2 or $3, bringing them back, and people were buying them for $4 or $5, which was half the price of what the government said. Then the cops go in, then there's a standoff, then there's violence. This is fucking bullshit. Now, I don't smoke, and I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. I used to. And this is going to happen. This is a template. This is a model. What is their justification? Have you heard anything?
It's already happening as well.
I know it's happening, but what is the justification? Because you can't say, you didn't know that was going to happen. You do know it's going to happen. You're completely aware it's going to happen. You're creating this discord that's going to result in these arrests that are false and there's some of them that are true and etc., making this gigantic mess. What is the justification? Have you heard anything?
So I'm going to be the devil's advocate because I just came from the LCBO Trade Symposium.
Somebody has to do this sometime.
I got to go learn about the LCBO's plan for cannabis. This has nothing about cannabis in it. It's just a prop. But they don't know that. All the stuff that you're saying they know, they don't know. They believe...
Okay, clear this shit. Let's go. Let's go right now with an argument.
What the LCBO said. They believe that their plan is going to eliminate the black market through online retail. So their plan isn't to eliminate the black market through brick and mortar. They plan on creating this like fancy e-commerce site where you can like order on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever. Obviously it's not going to work.
Right.
But they actually believe what they're saying, and they were making fun of the black market in the presentation. They're like, we've done research on how people consume cannabis, and we know that they just call their guy. He comes with a backpack. This is literally what they said. He takes it out of their backpack and he says, oh, this is high THC. And they think that they're going to be competitive because they're going to talk about terpene profiles and not give
So they haven't seen any of the websites that exist? That's crazy.
Come on. Exactly.
They did go to Colorado and California on like a trade mission, which is super interesting.
In the government?
This is the bureaucrats that are creating the Ontario cannabis stores.
And you're being a devil's advocate by bringing this information to me that they don't really know?
They don't know. I'm just
so
letting
you're
you know.
telling me that the reason I'm wrong on this is because they don't know jack shit that's available to all of us sitting at the table and the guy smoking a cigarette out here by the van.
But they can claim ignorance, right? Like they can say, oh no, we did our research, we've seen the black market, we know what's going on, and so this is our solution to that. But they're completely denying the very real reality that there are websites operating in this province already that provide everything from THC content to terpene profiles to lab testing. That's right, you heard it here, folks. Black market artists using lab testing. It's not revolutionary. People have access to this now. It's just it's a question of money.
And I think that kind of speaks to beyond the black market self-regulating. I think it speaks to the fact that in a free market, competition dictates who does best.
Sure, you got shit weed. No thanks.
Exactly.
Yours is great.
Exactly.
I'm in.
Yeah,
right.
I'll pay the extra $2.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
With the OCS, I unfortunately believe that some of their product will not be to standard because if you look at the Health Canada website...
Were you an oracle? Wow. How did you figure that out?
Health Canada's website shows the amount of product that they're all sitting on.
I was being facetious.
Oh, yeah. And for people that don't know, obviously that's either cannabis that has to be sold or they're going to, all these publicly traded companies write that off their balance sheet. From a financial background, I could tell you that's not going to happen because their stock price would definitely take a hit. So, when you look at it, from the perspective, again, from the gray or black market, however you want to call it, trying to transition, they will always do better because they already are providing a standard, a level of professionalism and knowledge, and they already have an established infrastructure, that could have easily have been transitioned and knowledge have been passed if they were more open to the idea.
I do think some of those companies are transitioning, though. I just got an email from medpotnow.com, which is now
plug.
Aurora.
Blatant plug. Yeah,
right? And MedSpot now they're stopping selling cannabis. They're only selling CBD products. And they've told people to go to Aura Dispensary in Vancouver, which is licensed, which is, Aurora's sister company.
Right.
So I think the market is transitioning slowly, but unfortunately they're taking a really long time with the craft licenses. So the micro producers, the micro processors, edibles, none of those products are on the market. But what we're not talking about, which will affect everything this Thursday, is the CAMO decisions coming out.
Right.
So that's a Supreme Court decision that affects interprovincial trade for cannabis and alcohol.
So if BC grows some cool stuff and somebody in Saskatchewan wants to get it,
right now there's huge interprovincial trade barriers, But if the decision, which comes out the day before 420, removes that, that means
That
that
comes out on the Thursday,
anyone who has a
19th?
license technically should be able to sell across province.
Actually,
potentially.
Friday. Sorry, right. It's Friday.
So just like how you can order, your weed online from whatever online dispensary, Herbal Dispatch, MedPod Now, whatever it is, you might be able to order from an LP just like how you can for medical, and they'll deliver it right to your door. So that will really crash the LCBO's monopoly.
Huge, because you can order your fancy weed from BC, and it might take a little bit longer, but you're completely subverting the OCS, which,
Okay, well, you guys have been fantastic. We are getting a little short on time. Oh, I can't believe I said that. My dad was killed by a grandfather clock, and I'm traumatized. We only have a little bit of time left, and I do have a few more questions. That doesn't mean you're getting out. I'm just telling you we're bringing it into the funnel, okay? I want to ask about specifically now, we talked about Rachel Notley seeming to do a good job despite the death threats in Alberta. Some of the guys wearing cowboy hats don't like a woman, and they don't like the NDP going on at the same time. What is going on with the give me your take, because we've covered a lot of things on the NDP party of Ontario. How do they move in? How do they move in?
Green Crush 2018, baby. Let's get it.
Yeah,
Orange Crush.
To be honest, I was at the amazing provincial debate that was hosted by the Jamaican Canadian Association, in which
where was this?
This was last week, in which Andrea Horvath actually stole the show.
Is
she was
that right?
amazing. Yeah.
Was she debating?
She was debating.
Who did she debate?
She debated Wynn, and she debated Schreiner.
Oh, is
Schreiner
this
was
on
great.
video?
Yeah. Yeah. And she
Good
actually
God.
said
Let's
that
get
if
that going.
elected, she would overhaul the Liberals' plans.
She would overhaul it. So she'd look at it and say, well, of course, you got to do this, you got to do that, but let's change this. She really wants to work with it as a skeleton.
Precisely. And by overhauling it, I don't think she means let's pump out more public stores, because that's more money that the government doesn't have.
Yeah.
So I think that's the
everywhere
mixed
else
model.
is suffering from brick and mortar because of the way things are now. All these bookstores are closing down and all kinds of things. How does the Ontario go, we need more brick and mortar? Like, it doesn't make sense.
And the thing is, understandable if they took the private sector, because dispensaries per square foot are one of the best revenue generating kind of retail locations. However, to get to that point, you're talking about taxpayers' dollars to employ, which are now will be $15 an hour at the end of the year, and then it's hydro and all of that stuff. So the government should do like what BC did, Alberta did, the NDP, which is you pay for the build out, and then you pay me so that you can have a store.
Right,
Yeah.
You make
okay.
licensing
fee,
revenue,
yeah.
and you make revenue off the excise tax.
You're all in agreement
No
with
overhead.
this, you three?
I
Pretty
think
much?
it'd be
For the
great.
most part.
Okay. Well, you sound like you got a draft.
No, I definitely agree with the politics. I think that Andrea Horvath sees clearly the need for municipal focus, so that Toronto, Windsor, and Hamilton are different from each other, and they're also different from the rest of rural Ontario, and that should dictate the policy around cannabis, not this sort of one size fits all model that we're just going to place on top of Ontario. You need to pay attention to what your communities are literally dying of. Like, what is affecting Toronto is not necessarily affecting Ottawa or Windsor or Hamilton. So it's a more sensitive issue, I think.
All right, well, we're going to close out on one more question, but don't run away, because it's going to take a while to answer it, okay? So this has to do with the future. Yeah, this has to do with the future. Okay, it's kind of scary. It involves the police, and what they're saying is they're going to... I envision this. Okay, let me put it this way. I had a bunch of questions that I was going to ask you, but instead of doing that, I'm gonna lay out a scenario, okay, and I'm gonna ask you to pay attention, and then I'm gonna ask you to pick apart and chime in on it. And by the time the three of you folks do that, we're gonna have to wrap it on up. So here's the deal. They don't really have the science together, or the understanding. When I say they, just anybody who's running things, on who's intoxicated and should be considered inebriated at the wheel of a vehicle, or at the wheel of a motorcycle or a bus or whatever the hell you want. And so what's going to happen is, and I can prove that really quickly, is that if I take a little bit of tiny cannabis oil to save my cancer, and I gradually, carefully, through various means, including the Rick Simpson method, which is what I use, gradually increase, there's a way to take in this cannabis to the point where you do not get high. So you do this little tiny pinhead and you keep on going, and then you do 2 pinheads a day per week, and then so on and so forth. And if you're low tolerance, you take it down lower than that. By the time you come up on this arc, you're doing 1 gram a day, and you are not impaired. But there is cannabis in your blood. Now, if I'm taking 1 gram a day and I can just walk around and talk like this, and you start a pinhead a day, a pinhead a day, a pinhead a day, and then all of a sudden you're not ready to go to the next part, and you break that smooth upward arc, boom, and go up here to like 6 pinheads a day. Whereas I'm taking this whole gram, and you're taking 6 pinheads a day, but that's way more. You've got less cannabis in your system. You're on the friggin' moon, and you're giggling and falling apart, and you shouldn't be in a car, and I've got a ton of cannabis in my system because I'm taking 1 gram a day, but I properly upticked until I was level. So they don't have any kind of way to really prove. They could have way less stuff in your system, and you're ripped, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself driving that thing, and I could have way more and be completely fine. They can't figure this out. That's immaterial. They're just going to say, if it's in your blood, you're popped. And you're going to go to court, and there's going to be troubles, and I don't like it. And I don't like the fact that the machinery and the little liquid, the stamps, they're going to smooch across your forehead if you refuse to spit and everything else. I could see a little bit of sweat on yours now. I could easily wipe that off and sample this DNA. And I can understand you have cannabis in your system. That doesn't mean you're high. How and what are they going to try to do to get the proof on their side, and how and what are we going to do to resist? I'm going to start with Tyler.
Unfortunately, right now, I was at a town hall with Bill Blair, and unfortunately, even if you're a patient, any cannabis in your system above, I think it's like 2 micrograms or something.
And what is that?
You know what?
2 micrograms.
It's not a lot, because I can tell you, there's people in Colorado who spoke, who I've heard speak, who said even if you get to close to 15 micrograms, like that should be more of the standard, or 10. However, if you're a patient and you have more than 2, regardless of your situation, that is impairment of driving, and you can face like fines or car impoundment.
You're a liar.
Yeah.
You're a liar at that point. Not you, sir.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying, that's not provable.
That's true.
Like, someone's going to go to court who understands all of this, and they're going to have an easel and a chart, and they're going to say, I can prove you're wrong. You don't know shit. You can't just invest all this. And these guys know this is coming. So they're investing in the companies that are going to bring out the technology, such as whatever you blow into or whatever kind of stamps. Yeah. And let's take a look at cops' portfolios, primarily. Like, have you invested into any cannabis companies? Can I ask you that?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Are you a police officer?
No.
Okay. If you were a police officer and I asked you that, what if I said to you, have you invested, Bill Blair? Are you deeply invested into any cannabis companies, Bill? Yes or no? Don't fuck around with a Kathleen Wynne answer. Yes or no? Are you invested, and which ones? Yes or no? Let's not have a conversation. Yeah. This is a question and demand. All these folks are susceptible to and likely to have a conflict of interest on this matter. And when I was taking a piss at the PCMA, this dude leaned over and said, hey, great talk, man. Boy, that Bill Blair's got deep in a lot of these companies, hasn't he? And right away that bell went ding. My prediction is accurate. Now, this is just off the cuff record, sort of keep it in the men's room type of deal, but he confirmed to me that this guy's balls deep into a lot of companies, and that's why everybody else is a criminal. Basically, if you're trading in this thing and you're not making money for him, you're going to jail, or they're going to bust you for it. What do you think of that?
It's not just Bill Blair. So I used to work for a Liberal Party candidate up in Fort McMurray when it was
I just tapped him as the architect of this whole paradigm. That's all, but you're
Liberal
dead right.
Staffers, from Ottawa are deeply invested in cannabis companies since like
that they knew were coming. It's called insider trading.
I mean, it's not necessarily trading because they're not necessarily public companies.
But it's insider knowledge that's giving you the leg up on the rest of us.
Coming and you work for a government that's implementing it. That's why I kind of knew legalization was going to happen, because, you know, if people like Chuck Rafici, who's the former CFO of the Liberal Party, are founding cannabis companies, then
it's filthy.
It's going to happen.
Here's the great hypocrisy, though, is that, you can throw all your money behind these companies, these tech companies, which some of them are incredible, but when you're talking about like roadside testing for drivers under the influence,
that is what I'm talking about.
So if you really want to know if someone's under the influence, you have to do more than take a blood or sweat sample. You have to gauge whether they can walk a straight line, whether they can touch their hands,
don't
their
have
nose.
to do
exactly right. But the problem with that, which you clearly illustrated, is that the THC content in your blood does not determine whether you can operate a motor vehicle.
So how can you hang a law on it?
I don't know.
Someone's gonna. I'll tell you what. Someone who knows all of this is going to have to get busted at a point.
Sure.
They're going to have to go and get
and prove it in court,
in
right?
remand,
And to set a
etc.
precedent, yeah.
And then they're going to have to get
Right.
a lawyer, and then they're going to have to get a fucking chart out.
Well, the
and
issue,
it might be me.
The very real issue though of THC mixed with alcohol in getting
That's
behind
different, too.
that's different, and that is a problem that
Sure.
should be stopped. But these are separate conversations that can't be
Yeah.
lumped all into one, saying you can't smoke
Exactly.
weed and you can't get behind it. Like that doesn't help anyone.
No,
right?
well, it helps a lot of pockets that
Helps
you
a lot
don't
of
have
pockets.
access to.
Exactly. Unfortunately.
I'm going to give you the last word, you folks, to tell me what your little sting is, and I don't mean to belittle it. I'm just saying we've only got a little bit of time. So, oh God, I've been my grandfather. So, tell me what you think you'd like to say. Tell me any kind of hashtags or any kind of places where you folks can be reached and further this conversation.
For sure. So Sensible Ontario, we're still running our campaign up until the election to make cannabis an election issue. So if
June
you
7th.
want June 7th, yeah.
June 7th.
Just around the corner.
Really? That's so amazing. Ahead of July 1 and everything else, whatever.
So if you want to participate in our campaign, we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for donations. You can go to sensibleontario.ca or sensibleon on all social media platforms to get involved. And yeah, we really need your support to kind of keep pushing and keep engaging with politicians
Well
to make
said,
sure they're
Lisa.
held accountable.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just
Zoe.
want to bolster that by reiterating that this new generation of activism online, it can actually make a difference. So following us, liking and sharing our posts makes a huge difference. The amount of visibility we have affects whether we can have conversations with Andrea Horvath and have conversations with Doug Ford. Getting in those rooms is really important right now. So in order to get a seat at the table, we need our communities to stand behind us.
Did you rehearse that?
I didn't.
Good God. I asked you to cap it all off. It sounds like you were memorizing a fantastically written script. Well done. Tyler, final word.
Yeah, definitely. It's really simple to just get out there and just send a letter and voice your concerns to the political parties. People are wondering how to get involved and if their voices will be heard. They need to hear from their caucus, especially in an election year. If you have, a candidate in your constituency that you think supports cannabis, you got to support them so that they can amplify that voice. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what party it is, legalization's happening. It just has to be right for the community that you're in.
None of you fudged. None of you bullshitted me. None of you hummed and hawed. You're not politicians. Get out of here. I want to thank you folks for coming in. This is Tyler, Lisa, and Zoe from Sensible Ontario. It's been so great having you in.
Thank you so much.
We will have you in again sometime, perhaps after the election, June 7th. Thank you for your reminding me of this. That's fantastic. And right now, I'm going to ask you to tell everybody that you know that this is an important issue. This is a health issue. This is a rights issue. And this is a economic issue. This is a democratic issue. And I think we're all kind of tired of listening to the control issues that don't address these realities. So thanks for listening to the show this week, you guys. My name is Alan Park, and I am going to be hosting a fantastic deal for 420. I guess on Saturday, if we don't get another ice storm. I'm going to stay committed to the word, but if we get another ice storm, I cannot promise you I will be there, okay? That's ridiculous.
Isn't it Friday?
What's Friday? Oh, that's right. I'm so
420.
sorry. 420 is on Friday. Oh, you're right. I got confused. Thanks for reminding me, but I'll tell you why I did that. I got confused on that because on Friday and Saturday in Windsor, our good friend, fantastic ambassador of all things amazing, Paul Hartman, will be a speaker at the 420 there, and you don't want to miss it. If you're anywhere near Detroit or Ontario, the southern west portion of Ontario, that is indeed where you want to get yourself to. Paul Hartman and I will be in the actual day proper in Kensington Market at the Hot Box, put there 20 years ago almost by Abby Roach. And can you imagine a bunch of freaks telling her she might have to shut that down? That's just nothing but cartoons.
Facts they deserve to know.
Those who have achieved an elevated existence, raise your fists.
My name is Alan Park. This is Green Crush Conspiracy Queries, and we will be coming at you as long as we have to. And hopefully at one point I can just go away and focus on some other things another day that are far more entertaining than pushing up against the hill these police and these politicians with ideas ill. It's not okay, it's not all right, and it's going to change not overnight, but we're going to push it hard and push it to the right place because cannabis is fantastic. Look at the smile on my face.